All right, so you're gearing up for a civil engineering job interview, feeling that mix of excitement and maybe a little bit of nerves.
Right.
Totally normal.
Definitely. It's a big step, but good prep can make all the difference.
And that's where this online guide comes in. It's packed with tips, not just on answering those classic interview questions, but on showing them you're the real deal.
It's not just about knowing the formulas, it's about thinking like a civil engineer. This guide really gets that.
Because, let's be honest, anyone can cram for a test. But interviewers, they want to see you can APPLY that knowledge, handle those real world curveballs.
Yeah, and honestly, that you're someone they'd actually enjoy working with. That's where this guide's breakdown of different question types is so helpful.
Yeah, they each have a different purpose, like starting with those technical proficiency ones. Even the name sounds kind of intimidating.
I know, right? But it's not about being a walking encyclopedia. The guide's example about site analysis really clicked for me.
Oh, yeah, that one stuck with me too. It's not enough to just say, yep, I know what site analysis is. It's about showing them you're already picturing the whole project.
Right. Imagine they ask, how would you analyze a site for a new skyscraper? You got to go deep. Soil testing, GIS software, zoning regulations.
You're thinking about drainage, environmental impact, even how nearby buildings might be affected by the construction.
That level of detail, that's what separates someone who's memorized this textbook from someone who could actually do the work.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So what about project experience questions? It seems like that's where you can really tell a story.
Absolutely. This guide has a great example about adapting a project mid-construction because new building height restrictions came into play.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. It wasn't just about the problem, it was how the engineer handled it. Redesigning on the fly, communicating those changes to everyone involved.
And doing it all fast to minimize delays and keep the project on budget. That's what impresses interviewers.
So it's almost like they're looking for mini case studies from your past. Show them how you've tackled tough situations in the real world.
Exactly. Did you panic? Or did you use your skills to come up with a creative solution?
And did you learn from any mistakes? That's got to be important too.
For sure. They want to see that you can reflect and grow from those experiences. Because let's face it, no project goes perfectly smoothly all the time.
Okay, now this is where things get interesting. What about those behavioral and situational questions? Civil engineering's not exactly a solo job, right?
Not at all. You're constantly working with architects, contractors, city officials, sometimes the public.
Yeah.
It's a whole team effort.
So these questions, they're about how you handle conflict, deadlines, those difficult personality moments that happen on every project.
The guide stresses having real examples ready. Not just saying I'm a team player, but a specific time you resolved a disagreement or kept a project on track despite setbacks.
What I liked is they said interviewers aren't looking for perfect answers here. It's more about showing you can reflect and learn from those tricky situations.
Because who hasn't had a project go sideways at some point? It's about how you react when that happens.
Okay, now for the part where we can get creative. Those problem solving and creativity questions. I feel like this is where you can really set yourself apart.
Absolutely. It's showing you can think outside the textbook, analyze unexpected situations, come up with solutions on the spot, like the guide's example of encountering an unexpected water channel during a highway expansion.
Oh, that's right. They had to do a whole hydraulic analysis on the fly and then design a custom drainage system that wouldn't delay the entire project.
Exactly. It's that mix of engineering knowledge and quick thinking that really makes you stand out. You're not just following instructions, you're finding solutions no one anticipated.
That's seriously impressive. But then there's the, shall we say, less glamorous side about regulatory and safety questions. I mean, they're important, but
Right. Essential is the word. We design structures people rely on, so knowing the codes, standards, ethical considerations, that's non-negotiable.
the guide uses this example about environmental impact assessments. It shows you're not just trying to get the job done, you actually care about the bigger picture.
Especially these days, sustainable design is huge. Demonstrating you're up on those regulations, it shows you're a responsible engineer, thinking long-term.
Makes total sense. Now, beyond the types of questions, this guide has some solid PRP advice too. It's not just about cramming formulas the night before, right?
Nope. Think of it like you're marketing yourself as the ideal candidate. You're showcasing your skills, your experience, your passion for this field.
Okay, so what's step one? They mention reviewing those fundamental engineering concepts. But is that really necessary if I've already got a degree?
It's easy to get rusty, especially if your current job focuses on one specific area. So brushing up on structural analysis, fluid mechanics, geotech, it's like sharpening your tools before the big game.
And they suggest tailoring that review to the job description, which makes sense. No need to cram everything if the role is heavily focused on, say, transportation engineering.
Exactly. Now, beyond the technical knowledge, understanding the company itself is crucial.
Do your research is pretty standard advice, but this guide goes deeper than just glancing at their website.
Look at their past projects, what they specialize in, even their company culture. LinkedIn is your friend here. See who you'll be interviewing with. Check out their profiles.
It shows you're genuinely interested, not just applying to every open position you find. Now, for those behavioral questions we talked about, the guide really emphasizes prepping for those in advance.
Because in the moment, it's tough to recall specific examples that truly highlight your skills. So think of stories NW that demonstrate teamwork, problem solving, how you handle challenges.
Just jotting down some bullet points for each story could be a lifesaver.
Way less stressful than trying to come up with it all on the spot.
Yeah.
Speaking of showcasing your work, there's great advice on portfolio prep.
Ah, yes, the visual proof of all those awesome projects. But is it really just about throwing everything in there?
Not at all. Choose projects that align with the company's interests and that highlight your specific expertise.
They even talk about how to present your portfolio, making it visually appealing and easy to navigate.
It's like you're telling a story with your work, not just dumping a bunch of files on them.
Okay, I'm seeing how much thought goes into this. It's not just about showing up and knowing the answers, it's about the whole package.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And before we jump into the next section of the guide, one thing I want to emphasize, have questions ready to ask the interviewer.
Oh, right. It's a two-way street. You're evaluating them, too, making sure it's a good fit for you.
Yeah,
Not just desperate for any job.
exactly. And good questions. They show you're engaged, thinking critically. This guide has some good starting points. But don't be afraid to come up with your own based on your research.
Like asking about specific projects they're working on, their approach to sustainability, or even what the biggest challenges have been lately.
Those kinds of questions, they show you've done your homework and that you're already picturing yourself as part of their team.
Okay, so we've covered the types of questions, some solid prep advice. But what about the big picture? What does a good civil engineer candidate look like beyond just the technical stuff?
That's where we go beyond the textbook and into those qualities that make you stand out. Because let's face it, everyone applying will have a decent grasp of the fundamentals.
So what sets someone apart? What are they looking for beyond that baseline knowledge?
Well, the guide highlights several key areas, and one of the big ones is project management skills.
Which makes sense, right? It's not just about designing a bridge. It's about managing that whole process, the budget, the timeline, all the moving parts.
A good civil engineer understands the big picture and can keep a project on track from start to finish.
And then there's collaboration. I mean, civil engineering is rarely a solo gig, is it?
Nope, you're constantly working with architects, contractors, government officials, all those different personalities.
So strong communication skills, the ability to build relationships, handle conflict, that's got to be crucial.
Absolutely. The guide uses this example of an urban development project where bi-weekly meetings with all the stakeholders were essential just to keep everyone on the same page.
Sounds like a recipe for a lot of emails and strong coffee. But seriously, that collaborative spirit, that's what makes these big projects happen.
Now, there's another quality that's becoming more and more important: sustainability.
Yeah, it's more than just a buzzword these days, especially in civil engineering.
It's about understanding the environmental impact of your work and incorporating sustainable practices into every stage of a project.
Which ties back to that environmental assessment question, right? It's not just about getting it done, it's about doing it right.
Exactly. It's showing that you're not just focused on the technical aspects, but also the long-term consequences for the environment, for the community.
It's like you're not just building for the present, you're building for the future.
And along with project management, collaboration, sustainability, strong communication skills are absolutely vital.
Which honestly is important in any job, but especially when you're dealing with these complex technical concepts.
You need to be able to explain those concepts clearly, both verbally and in writing, to clients, colleagues, sometimes even the general public.
Because if you can't communicate your ideas, it doesn't matter how brilliant your designs are.
Exactly. It's about bridging that gap between the technical world and the real world.
Okay, so we've talked about project management, collaboration, sustainability, communication. Is there anything else that makes a candidate truly stand out, like that wow factor?
There is. And it might surprise you. It's regulatory knowledge.
Really? I mean, yeah, it's important, but
Think about it. A truly good civil engineer understands their work has real-world consequences. It's not just about building something that looks good on paper. It's about building something that meets all the necessary standards, all the codes.
to make sure it's safe, durable, actually works the way it's supposed to.
Exactly. They understand their work impacts people's lives, the environment. They're aware of local, state, federal regulations, building codes, environmental laws.
So even if you can't rattle off every single regulation from memory, showing that you understand their importance, that you're committed to staying up to date.
It speaks volumes. It shows that commitment to ethical practice, responsible engineering.
All right, before we move on to the next part of our deep dive, let's touch on something that can be a little uncomfortable for some candidates, talking about past failures or challenges during the interview.
Yeah, no one likes to dwell on their mistakes, but let's be real, we all make them. And interviewers actually expect to hear about them.
Wait, seriously, why would they want to hear about my failures?
They're not looking for perfection. They're looking for self-awareness, problem-solving skills, the ability to learn from those experiences. It's about how you handle those tough situations.
So how do you talk about those things without sounding defensive or making excuses?
The key is to frame them as learning opportunities. Choose an example where you faced a significant challenge. Explain how you approached it, the steps you took, what you learned from it.
Not about dwelling on the negative, it's about showcasing your ability to grow from those experiences.
Exactly. And the guide emphasizes highlighting your problem-solving process.
Yeah.
What technical standards did you consult? How did you collaborate with others to find a solution?
And of course, mentioning the positive outcome. Even if the initial situation wasn't ideal, how did you turn things around?
Sharing those positive outcomes, it demonstrates your commitment to engineering excellence, your ability to make the best of a challenging situation.
Okay, so we've covered aligning your values with the company, showcasing your regulatory knowledge, framing those challenging experiences in a positive light. What else can we glean from this guide?
Well, it provides excellent advice on showcasing your problem-solving skills, which is a core competency for any engineer.
Because engineering at its heart, is about solving problems, right?
Absolutely. And the guide suggests using a specific method for answering these types of questions, the STAR method.
The STAR method. Remind me what that is again.
STAR stands for Situation, Task, Action, and Result. It's a framework for structuring your answers to those behavioral questions in a clear, compelling way.
So you start by describing the situation, the context of the problem.
Right. Then you outline the task, your specific role in addressing that problem.
Then you detail the actions you took, the steps you followed, the solutions you proposed.
And finally, you highlight the result, the outcome of your actions, the impact you made.
So it's like instead of just rambling, you're giving them a step-by-step breakdown of how your awesome engineer brain works.
Exactly. And the guide uses that water channel scenario as an example, walking you through how to apply the STAR method to that situation.
That's a great illustration. Really helps to see it in action. Okay, I think it's time to tackle the part that makes a lot of people nervous. Those technical proficiency questions.
Ah, yes, where they really put that engineering knowledge to the test. Is there any way to prepare for every possible question? Probably not.
Yeah, that's what makes me nervous. Like, what if they ask me something I've completely forgotten?
It's impossible to know everything. But this guide does a great job of outlining common themes and giving sample questions to get you thinking.
Like one example they give is, can you walk us through how you would conduct a site analysis for a new construction project? That seems pretty broad.
It is, and that's intentional. They're not just looking for a textbook definition of site analysis. They want to see you APPLY that knowledge step by step.
Okay, so I'd talk about conducting a topographical survey, analyzing soil conditions, assessing environmental constraints. It's about showing I'm thinking about all the factors that go into selecting and preparing a site.
Exactly, and don't forget about mentioning relevant software.
Right. Like if I was applying for a role that heavily used AutoCAD or Civil 3D, I'd definitely bring those up.
Now, another technical question they highlight is, describe a time when you had to adapt a project due to changing regulations or unforeseen site conditions. We kind of touched on this earlier, but it's worth exploring further.
Because, let's be honest, in civil engineering, things rarely go exactly according to plan.
Right. There's always some unexpected soil condition or a new regulation that throws a wrench in the works.
Yeah.
So they want to see how you handle those curveballs.
So I'd pick a specific example from my experience. Maybe a project where new environmental regulations came into play mid-construction, or where we discovered unstable soil, and had to change the design.
And then explain the challenge, how you adapted while still meeting the project goals, and of course, the positive outcome.
It's all about showing them you can think on your feet, be resourceful, find solutions even when things get tough.
Exactly. Now, along with those technical questions about site analysis and project adaptation, the guide also emphasizes the importance of quality control.
Right, because at the end of the day, we're talking about structures that need to be safe, durable. People's lives depend on it.
Absolutely. And one question they suggest is, how do you ensure quality control throughout a project? This is where you demonstrate your commitment to delivering high-quality work that meets all the necessary standards.
So I talk about my approach to setting those quality benchmarks, conducting regular inspections, making sure everyone on the team is following those standards.
You can even mention specific quality control checklists or procedures you've used in the past. The more concrete examples, the better.
Okay, so we've covered technical questions, problem-solving scenarios, even those tricky tell me about a failure moments. But beyond the content of our answers, I feel like there's something else the guide is hinting at, like making a genuine connection with the interviewer.
Ah, yes. Because remember, you're not just a collection of skills and experiences on a resume. You're a person. And interviewers are people too.
So it's not just about spitting out the right answers, it's about showing them who you are, why you're passionate about civil engineering, and why you'd be a great addition to their team.
Exactly. And that comes through in your enthusiasm, your communication style, even your body language.
So let's talk about some practical ways to make that connection. What does the guide suggest?
First off, let's address the elephant in the room, or rather, the enthusiasm in the room. I know it sounds cheesy, but interviewers can tell if you're genuinely interested in the role in the company.
It's like you could have the perfect resume, ace all the technical questions, but if you're monotone, unenthusiastic, it's just not going to make a great impression.
Right. So let that passion for civil engineering shine through. Talk about projects that excited you, challenges you enjoyed tackling, innovations in the field that get you geeking out. It's contagious, trust me.
I'm picturing myself interviewing someone who lights up talking about, like, the latest advancements in earthquake-resistant design. I'd be way more interested than if they just droned on about shear forces.
Exactly. Now, another thing that makes a huge difference is active listening. It shows you're not just waiting for your turn to talk, you're genuinely interested in what the interviewer has to say.
So asking clarifying questions, building on their comments, really engaging in a back-and-forth conversation.
And not just nodding along saying exactly
Mm-hmm.
every 5 seconds, which, by the way, I am so guilty of doing.
Haha, we all have our verbal tics. But yeah, showing that you're listening, responding thoughtfully, it goes a long way.
It shows respect, curiosity, a willingness to learn,
Mhm.
all qualities any employer would value.
Now, I know this might sound superficial, but the guide does mention the importance of nonverbal communication. And honestly, it makes sense.
Body language speaks volumes. Maintaining eye contact, sitting up straight, using open and welcoming gestures, it all contributes to how you're perceived.
Because if you're slouched in your chair, avoiding eye contact, fidgeting like you're about to bolt out the door,
It sends the message that you're either not confident, not interested, or maybe just really need to use the restroom.
so good posture, a genuine smile, those little things actually matter.
They really do. Now, let's circle back to something we discussed earlier. Tailoring your answers to the specific company and role. This is key, not just for showing you've done your homework, but for making that genuine connection.
Because it shows you understand their needs, their values, that you're not just using some generic one-size-fits-all approach.
Right. So when you're answering those questions, try to weave in details that demonstrate your knowledge of the company. Show them how your skills and experience align with their goals.
For example, if they're known for their work in renewable energy, I might mention a project where I incorporated solar panels into a building design, even if it wasn't the main focus of that project.
Exactly. Or if they're really into innovative urban planning, you could talk about your passion for finding creative solutions to traffic congestion.
It's about connecting the dots, showing them you're already thinking about how you can contribute to what they do.
And lastly, don't forget the importance of authenticity. I know it sounds cliche, but being yourself can make all the difference.
Because at the end of the day, you don't want just any job. You want the right job, right? Where your personality, your values, they mesh with the company culture.
Exactly. So don't try to fit into some preconceived mold of what you think a civil engineer should be. Let your personality shine through. Share your passions, your interests, Even your quirks.
Because when you're genuine, you relax, the interviewer relaxes, and that conversation becomes more natural. That's where those real connections are made.
Well said. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive into acing that civil engineering job interview, remember, it's not just about proving you're qualified, it's about showing them who you are and why they should be excited to have you on their team.
Exactly. Go in there prepared, confident, and ready to share your passion for civil engineering. You've got this.
And remember, even if this particular interview doesn't lead to your dream job, every experience is a learning opportunity. Soak up the feedback, refine your approach, and keep pursuing those opportunities that truly align with your goals and values.
We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll have even more tips and strategies to help you nail that interview. Stay tuned.
We're back and ready to dive even deeper into prepping for that civil engineering job interview. Before we, well, not really a break since this is a podcast, we were talking about asking questions to make sure the company's the right fit for you, not just about them grilling you.
Right, exactly. You're not just trying to get any job. You're trying to launch a career you'll love, one that fits your goals, your passions.
So we talked about the questions they'll ask, the technical stuff, the behavioral, all that. But what about when they hit you with that classic, tell me about a time you failed? I mean, who wants to bring that up in an interview?
It's tough, I get it, but this guide makes a really interesting point. Interviewers actually expect you to have faced challenges, setbacks. It's how you learn from them that matters.
So it's not about pretending I've never messed up.
Yeah.
Because, let's be real, we all have. Exactly. Pick an example where you hit a real obstacle. Maybe a design flaw that got caught late or a project that went way over budget. Explain what happened, how you approached the problem.
And what you took away from that experience to become a better engineer. Not just wallowing in the failure, but showing how it helped you grow.
Right. The guide suggests focusing on that problem-solving process. What technical standards did you consult? How did you work with others to find a solution?
And it helps if there was a positive outcome, right? Even if things went wrong initially, did you manage to mitigate the damage? Learn lessons to avoid similar mistakes in the future.
Those details show you're not just dwelling on the negative. You've used those experiences to become a stronger engineer.
Man, this guide is packed with good stuff.
Mhm.
Okay, switching gears a bit. It talks a lot about showcasing problem-solving skills, which makes sense for any engineering role, really.
Problem-solving is at the heart of what we do. And the guide suggests using the STAR method when answering those behavioral questions. You know, the ones about how you handle specific challenges.
STAR method. Remind me what that stands for again. It's one of those things I always mix up.
No worries, it happens to everyone. STAR. Situation, task, action, result. It's a way to structure your answers so they're clear, concise, and really highlight your skills.
Okay, so you start by setting the scene, describing the situation where the problem popped up. Then you explain your specific task, what you were responsible for.
Right. Then you get into the actions you took, the steps, the solutions you came up with, and finally you describe the result, the outcome, the positive impact you made.
So it's like, instead of rambling, I'm giving them this step-by-step breakdown of how my awesome engineer brain works.
Exactly. And the guide uses that water channel example from earlier to show how the STAR method can really bring a problem-solving story to life.
Okay, that makes sense. I can picture it now. Now I think it's time to tackle the part that makes a lot of people nervous, those technical proficiency questions.
Ah, yes, where they really grill you on the engineering nitty-gritty. Is there any way to prep for every possible question? Probably not.
That's what makes me nervous. What if they asked about something I've completely forgotten?
It's impossible to know everything. But this guide does a good job of outlining common themes and giving you sample questions to get your brain working.
Like one example they give is, can you walk us through how you'd conduct a site analysis for a new construction project? Seems pretty broad.
It is, and that's intentional. They're not looking for a textbook definition. They want to see you APPLY that knowledge step by step.
Okay, so I'd talk about doing a topographical survey, analyzing soil conditions, assessing environmental constraints, showing them I'm thinking about all the factors that go into picking and prepping a site.
Exactly. And don't forget mentioning relevant software.
Right. If the job uses AutoCAD or Civil 3D a lot, I'd definitely bring those up.
Now, another question they highlight is, describe a time you had to adapt a project due to changing regulations or unforeseen site conditions. We kind of touched on this earlier, but it's worth digging deeper.
Because let's be honest, in civil engineering, things rarely go exactly as planned.
Truth. There's always some unexpected soil condition or a new regulation that pops up. So they want to see how you roll with those punches.
So pick a specific example, maybe a project where new environmental regulations came in mid-construction. Or we discovered the soil was unstable and had to change the design.
And then explain the challenge, how you adapted while still meeting the project goals. And of course, the positive outcome.
It's all about showing you can think on your feet, be resourceful, find solutions even when things get tough. Which, let's face it, happens on pretty much every project.
Right. Now, along with those technical questions about site analysis and project adaptation, the guide emphasizes quality control.
Makes sense. At the end of the day, we're designing structures that people rely on. Safety, durability, that's got to be top of mind.
Absolutely. One question they suggest is, how do you ensure quality control throughout a project? This is where you really show your dedication to high standards.
So talk about setting quality benchmarks, regular inspections, making sure the whole team is on board with those standards.
You can even mention specific checklists or procedures you've used. The more concrete examples, the better.
Okay, so we've covered technical questions, problem solving, even those tell me about a failure moments. But beyond the content of our answers, I feel like the guide is hinting at something else, like making a genuine connection with the interviewer.
Ah, yes. Remember, you're not just a bunch of skills and experience on a resume. You're a person. And interviewers are people too.
So it's not just about spitting out the right answers. It's about showing them who you are, why you're passionate about civil engineering, why you'd be a great fittee on their team.
Exactly. And that comes through in your enthusiasm, your communication style, even your body language.
Okay, so let's get practical. What are some ways to actually make that connection? What does the guide suggest?
Well, first off, let's address the elephant in the room, or rather the enthusiasm in the room. It sounds cheesy, but interviewers can tell if you're genuinely interested, not just going through the motions.
It's like you could have the perfect resume, ace all the technical questions, but if you're monotone, unenthusiastic, it's just not going to land the same way.
Right. So let your passion shine through. Talk about projects that got you excited, challenges you enjoyed overcoming, innovations that get you geeking out. It's contagious.
I'm picturing myself interviewing someone who just lights up talking about like the latest in earthquake-resistant design. That grabbed my attention way more than someone droning on about shear forces.
Exactly. Now, another thing that makes a huge difference, active listening. It shows you're not just waiting to talk, you're actually interested in what the interviewer is saying.
So asking clarifying questions, building on their comments, really engaging in that back and forth.
And not just nodding along saying exactly every 5 seconds, which, by the way, I am so guilty of.
We've all got our verbal tics. But yeah, showing you're listening, responding thoughtfully, it goes a long way.
Shows respect, curiosity, willingness to learn. All qualities any employer would value.
Now, I know this might sound superficial, but the guide does mention nonverbal communication, and honestly, it makes sense.
Body language speaks volumes. Maintaining eye contact, sitting up straight, using open, welcoming gestures. It all plays into how you're perceived.
Because if you're slouched in your chair, avoiding eye contact, fidgeting like you're going to bolt out the door.
It kind of sends the message that you're either not confident, not interested, or really got to use the restroom.
So good posture, a genuine smile, those little things matter more than we think sometimes.
They really do. Now, let's circle back to something we talked about before. Tailoring your answers to the specific company and role. This is key, not just for showing you've done your research, but for making a real connection.
Because it shows you get them, right? Their
Yeah.
needs, their values. It's not just some generic one-size-fits-all approach.
Right. So weave in those details that show you understand their work,
Yeah.
show how your skills and experience fit into their goals.
For example, if they're big on renewable energy, I might talk about a project where I incorporated solar panels, even if that wasn't the main focus of the project.
Exactly. Or if they're known for being innovative with urban planning, you could talk about how you love finding creative solutions to traffic problems.
It's all about connecting the dots, showing you're already thinking about how you fit into what they do.
And lastly, don't underestimate the power of authenticity. Be yourself. I know it sounds cliche, but especially in an interview setting, it can make all the difference.
Because at the end of the day, you don't want just any job. You want the right job, one where your personality, your values, they mesh with the company culture.
Exactly. So don't try to fit into some idea of what you think a civil engineer should be. Let your personality come through, your passions, interests, even your quirks.
Because when you're genuine, you relax. The interviewer relaxes. And that conversation just flows more naturally. That's where real connections are made.
Well said. So, as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, remember, it's not just about proving you're qualified. It's about showing them WHO you are and why they should be excited to have you on their team.
All right, welcome back for the final stretch of our deep dive into acing that civil engineering job interview. We've talked about those tough questions, the technical must-knows, even how to handle those. Tell me about a time you failed moments.
And how to really showcase those problem-solving skills with the STAR method. Situation, task, action, result. Seriously, it's a lifesaver when you're trying to structure those answers in a way that makes sense.
Right, it's like a roadmap for your brain. But before we send you off into the interview battlefield, there's something this guide hints at but doesn't fully dive into, making a real connection with the interviewer.
Because you're not just a collection of formulas and project summaries, right? You're a human being with passion, experience, and hopefully a good sense of humor about those inevitable construction site mishaps.
Exactly. Beyond acing the technical stuff, how do you stand out as, well, someone they'd actually want to work with?
It starts with something simple: enthusiasm. Sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised how many candidates show up with all the right qualifications, but zero spark.
It's like they're so focused on reciting the textbook, they forget to show they actually care about this stuff. Building bridges, designing sustainable cities, things that make civil engineering cool.
Right. So tap into that passion. Talk about projects you were excited about, challenges you overcame. What are some innovations in the field that get you geeking out? Let that enthusiasm show.
I'm picturing myself interviewing someone who's like genuinely excited about the latest advancements in earthquake-resistant design. That'd grab my attention way more than someone just droning on about shear forces.
For sure. Now, another thing that makes a huge difference: active listening. It shows you're not just waiting for your turn to talk, but you're actually interested in what the interviewer has to say.
So asking clarifying questions, building on their comments, engaging in a real back and forth, not just waiting to deliver your rehearsed speech.
Exactly. And not just nodding along saying exactly every 5 seconds,
Right.
which, by the way, I'm so guilty of.
Uh-huh. We've all got our verbal tics. But yeah, showing that you're listening, responding thoughtfully, it goes a long way.
It shows respect, curiosity, willingness to learn, all good things.
Now, I know this might sound superficial, but the guide does mention nonverbal communication, and honestly, it makes sense.
Body language says a lot. Eye contact, posture, open and welcoming gestures. It
Yeah.
all contributes to how you come across.
Because if you're slouched in your chair, avoiding eye contact, fidgeting like you're ready to bolt.
It kind of makes it seem like you're not confident, not interested, or maybe just really need a bathroom break.
So yeah, good posture, a genuine smile, those little things matter more than we realize.
They do. Now let's circle back to something we talked about before. Tailoring your answers to the specific company and role, not just showing you did your research, but making a real connection.
Because it shows you get them right. Their needs, values. You're not just using a generic one-size-fits-all approach to every interview.
Right. So weave in details that show you understand their work. Show how your skills and experience fit into what they're trying to do.
For example, if they're known for their work in renewable energy, I might talk about a project where I used solar panels, even if that wasn't the main focus of the project, just to show I've got that experience.
Exactly. Or if they're all about innovative urban planning, you could talk about how much you love finding creative solutions to traffic problems, whatever's relevant to them.
It's about connecting the dots, showing you're already thinking about how you'd fit into their world.
And lastly, don't underestimate the power of authenticity. Be yourself. Sounds cliche, I know, but especially in interviews, it can make all the difference.
Because you don't want just any job, right? You want the right job where your personality, your values, they mesh well with the company culture. It's got to be a good fit both ways.
Exactly. Don't try to fit into some idea of what you think a civil engineer should be. Let your personality come through. Passions, interests, even your quirks.
Because when you're genuine, you relax, the interviewer relaxes, the conversation flows more naturally, and that's where those real connections happen.
Couldn't have said better myself. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into prepping for that civil engineering interview, remember, it's not just about proving you've got the skills, it's about showing them who you are, why you're passionate about this field, and why they should be excited to have you on their team.
Exactly. Go in there prepared, confident, and ready to share that passion for civil engineering. You've got this. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and best of luck in those interviews.